Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. The DG has been receiving a lot of documents, and welcome to this press conference on the entry into force of the Trade Facilitation Agreement. Joining me on the platform are the Director General, of course, Ambassador Harald Neple of Norway, who chairs our General Council, and Ambassador Mariam Salleh of Malaysia, who is the chair of the WTO Preparatory Committee on Trade Facilitation. Without further ado, I turn the floor over to you, Director General.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. In 2013, so slightly over 3 years ago, we did something that the WTO had never done before. We delivered a new multilateral trade deal, the Trade Facilitation Agreement. And it was a major breakthrough, and it took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of flexibility, creativity, and political will. The agreement was open for ratifications in November 2014, and this morning I received ratifications from Rwanda, Oman, Chad, and Jordan, and that brings the total number of ratifications to 112. Now, this means that we have crossed the required legal threshold of 2/3 of the WTO membership. Now, therefore, I'm very happy to announce that the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement has now entered into force. And this is fantastic news. By ratifying the agreement, the WTO members have shown their commitment to the multilateral trading system. They have followed through on the promises made when this deal was struck in Bali, like I said, just about 3 years ago. And by bringing the deal into force, we can now begin the work of turning the benefits of the agreement into reality. And as you know, the agreement aims to streamline, simplify, and standardize customs procedures. And by doing so, it will help to cut trade costs around the world. Estimates show that the full implementation of the agreement could reduce the trade costs globally by an average of 14.3%. Now, developing and least developed countries in particular stand to gain the most from the full implementation of the agreement, as they tend to have a higher level of trade costs. Now, it will help these countries to diversify their trade. Developing countries could increase the number of products they export by 20%, while LDCs, the least developed countries, could see an increase of up to 35%. In addition, developing countries could enter 1/3 more foreign markets than they do today on average, while LDCs could access 60% more markets, making these countries less vulnerable to external economic shocks. Now, the cumulative impact of all this is quite striking. By 2030, the agreement could add 2.7 percentage points per year to world trade growth, and more than half a percentage point per year to global growth of GDP. Now, this impact would be greater than the elimination of all tariffs existing around the world today. Now, the agreement also broke new ground in the way that it was designed. It provides developing countries and least developed countries with the flexibility to tailor the implementation of the provisions to their specific needs and their levels of development. In addition, the agreement provides for the necessary practical support to help members with their implementation. And we are, at this point in time, working with a range of donor members and partners to mobilize that kind of support. Now, to advance this work, to help connect donors and beneficiaries, we also launched the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement Facility. Now, with today's news, the entry into force of the agreement, we can now lift the support being provided to a new level. So I would like to thank all the WTO members that have ratified the deal so far for helping us to reach this historic moment, this historic milestone for the organization. I would also urge those members who haven't yet ratified the agreement to do so as soon as possible so that they can benefit as well from the provisions that we are putting into force. So the Trade Facilitation Agreement is the biggest reform of global trade this century. So it sends a message about the power of trade to support jobs and growth around the world in developed and in developing countries alike. Now, working together, we have the responsibility to implement the agreement and make those benefits a reality. I look forward to working with the membership on this, and I hope that today's news will inspire us for further success in the near future. We will now be turning the floor to two people who were instrumental in getting this done. So I will get it back to Keith, and he will transmit the floor to somebody else. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Chairman, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you and good afternoon. And this is indeed, as the DG has just said, a defining achievement for the WTO and the possible implications for the world economy has also been underlined by him. This is really a historic milestone for the multilateral trading system, the TFA being the first multilateral agreement since the WTO's inception. The agreement is innovative, it's practical, modern and global. And, following what the Director General has said, it is responsive to the needs of traders to cut trade costs and make cross-border trading more efficient for everyone. And this is, as he also said, particularly important for developing countries as they stand to gain the most from more efficient trade procedures. The agreement is also groundbreaking in that, for the first time in the WTO history, the commitments of developing and least developed countries are linked to their actual capacity to implement the agreement. All of these, this would not be possible without the hard and concerted efforts of all WTO members and the steady and intuitive leadership of the Director General. This accomplishment goes to show that the WTO members can work together and achieve meaningful outcomes for the benefit of all. However, as the DG has also underlined, our work does not stop here. I reiterate his call to all members to continue to work in unison and ensure that the benefits of the TFA turn into reality through its effective implementation. And I urge all those members who have not yet presented their instruments of acceptance to do so for them and their people to fully benefit from the agreement. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Keith. Good afternoon, everyone, and it is certainly a great pleasure to join Director General and the General Council Chair in welcoming this occasion of the Trade Facilitation Agreement entry into force. I have a very special connection to this treaty, going all the way back to the time when WTO members started its negotiations, and even prior to that. When it was decided to launch the exercise in 2004, I represented my country as a technical expert and did my best to ensure that work got off to a good start then. 12 years on, and following my return to Geneva as Malaysia's permanent representative, I was appointed to lead the Preparatory Committee on Trade Facilitation during the final phase of its work. Having seen the entire genesis of the Trade Facilitation Agreement at close range, it is especially rewarding to now witness the day when our long-standing labor is finally bearing fruit. This groundbreaking treaty will usher in a new era for trade facilitation reforms all over the world. I don't have to stress the benefits of the new agreement, as the Director General has already done that very eloquently. There is no doubt that it will bring countless gains to traders, governments and consumers alike. what I would like to highlight is a related factor, the agreement's contribution to growth and development. Studies have consistently shown that by lowering trade transaction costs, cutting back on red tape, and by facilitating the integration into global value chain, the TFA will give a significant boost to a country's economic performance, especially in the developing world. What further sweetens the deal is that developing and least developed countries are offered a golden opportunity to get the support they need to implement the new reforms. The agreement's innovative implementation architecture takes special and differential treatment to a new level in allowing for tailor-made approaches and securing far-reaching capacity-building support. It effectively ensures that everybody gets to reap the benefits and that nobody is left behind. Cooperation among stakeholders was key during the negotiations and the subsequent preparatory committee work. It will remain central to the upcoming next phase as we turn to implementing the improvements on the ground. I look forward to seeing the full application of the new agreement and stand ready to give it my ongoing support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Salleh. We'll take your questions now. The first question for Bryce, followed by Tom Miles.
Hi, Bryce Pashik with Bloomberg BNA. Thank you for your comments. Interested to hear that going forward, are there any issues where a multilateral agreement like the TFA could be reached in the near to medium term? And if not, do you believe that plurilateral agreements are the best approach going forward? Thank you.
Well, as usual, what determines the approach of any negotiation is our members themselves. They're the ones who try to get critical mass behind an initiative, and those initiatives sometimes advance faster, others less fast. I think coming from looking at this from the perspective of the Director General of the organization, and also from a global economy perspective, the multilateral agreements tend to have a bigger impact. They tend to benefit more. They tend to have a much bigger multiplier effect. So to the extent that we can, we should always try and strive to get agreements of a multilateral shape where everybody is on board, where all members of the WTO are on board. If that is not possible, other avenues are available to members. They have been explored before. Recently, we had the Information Technology Agreement expanded. That was a plurilateral engagement. We had the negotiations ongoing on the Environmental Goods Agreement. That's another plurilateral undertaking. There may be others. I don't know. What I also emphasize is that I urge members who decide to go on a non-multilateral avenue to keep the doors open for all members who want to participate to be in a position to do so, so that it is an open-ended exercise where everybody who wants to sit at the table will have a chance to do that.
Tom, you have the floor, followed by Jamil.
Thanks very much. Tom Miles from Reuters. I understand the carrot of this deal that attracts countries to join it because it will speed things up, but is there any stick associated with it? What happens to countries that have ratified the agreement but they don't have a national trade facilitation committee in place? And is it conceivable at some point that this could lead to some kind of trade dispute if one country accuses another of, not conforming to the standards of the agreement? Thanks.
Well, the agreement is a covered agreement, and therefore is an agreement like every other agreement of the WTO, which is also subject to dispute settlement procedures. But to be frank with you, I don't think we need a stick here. I think the carrot is big enough. It's a win-win for everyone, and I think that the fact that we managed to get 112 countries to sign up to this, and countries of very different profile, by the way, it's a sign that this is perceived as a win by the vast majority of the WTO, if not all WTO members. I don't know. I didn't take a poll. But clearly, it is the advantages of cutting costs, of being more efficient in connecting with the world, which is the incentive for people to participate. And the last four countries are very indicative. Look at that. One is a landlocked country in Africa, like Rwanda, and Chad, who is also a country who is a big cotton exporter and striving to find space for their exports and be more competitive in an area where distortions exist, and we all know that. We have Jordan, who is a country that is very much in the middle of an effort of creating jobs and creating opportunities for people who are displaced, who are migrating, and who need opportunities to better their lives. We have Oman, who has always been historically in the crux of trade routes, and has always been connected, and a big trader, has always been a big trader. And this gives you an idea of how important this kind of effort is for countries with very different and diverse profiles.
Jamil, you have the floor, followed by Ravi.
Yes, Mr. Azevedo, two questions. First, obviously this is being done in a moment that we see a major economy pointing out to protectionist measures, or at least measures that would not enhance trade. What message does this act today send to the Trump administration, to be very clear? And secondly, sorry, and the second question is the fact that for many years we heard that from emerging countries that this agreement had to be balanced with a larger pact. And this larger pact meant also, for example, agriculture and subsidies. This was when the Doha round still existed. So did we give up already on this idea that the trade facilitation would have to go, would have to be, let's say, assembled with something else, such as a reduction in subsidies in agriculture, etc.? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, the first one, the first part of your questions, I think I didn't hear anybody say that they were for higher trade costs. No one anywhere in the world. And this is what this agreement is about. This agreement is about lowering trade costs. And as far as I know, all countries, all WTO members are in favor of that, regardless of what their domestic situation is at any point in time. I might remind you that the United States was one of the first members to ratify this agreement. I think it was in the first 5 or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it was one of the very first ones. And the United States was also very much engaged and pushing for the conclusion of this agreement, and I don't see why that would change at this point in time. Everybody else, I think, has been pushing for this, and that goes for the second part of your question, which is I don't think that we need any kind of trade-off or any kind of linkage to anything else to realize that issues like the ones you mentioned, like agricultural subsidies, must be at the center of the agenda and have to be at the center of the agenda, and they are at this point in time at the center of the agenda. What is difficult at this point in time is finding a way forward, is finding a solution or a path that would allow us to converge in any kind of direction that leads to the reduction of those distortions and those subsidies. So I think members are quite clear, and they are very vocal on all sides that agricultural issues and the core Doha issues need to advance and need to make progress. That was actually part of the ministerial declaration in Nairobi, where they say these issues are not over. We need to continue negotiating and talking about them, and that's what we're doing. But it's tough.
Ravi, you have the floor, please.
I follow from what Jamil had asked, and now I'm quoting here something, Azevêdo, you said on 7 June 2012. You said at that time, for Brazil and many others, this trade facilitation agreement is not self-balancing issue. Then you also said at the same meeting, standalone outcomes for trade facilitation are simply not realistic. Then you said, in quotes, if we want to advance in this or any other area, actually, we must be sensitive to the needs also to make progress in other areas. Now, today we heard a totally different message from you. In fact, this is an intangible agreement where the benefits are constantly exaggerated. I'm here again quoting from the Economist
Is there
magazine.
going to be a question here,
No,
Ravi?
I'm just asking a question.
That we welcome
the
a question.
The question is the what you call the integrity and the consistency in what you say from time to time. At one time on 2012, you said trade facilitation is not a self-balancing issue. This is not what we want. And then today, after 4 years, you come up with a new pitch. So whom should we believe, that Azevêdo or this Azevêdo?
I also told my mother once that I would never date girls. I suppose I'm entitled to evolve. Something else also, it was not Mr. Azevêdo who said those things, it was the Brazilian ambassador. And finally, between that time and the conclusion of the trade facilitation agreement, there were intense negotiations which tried precisely to balance and to find the kind of equilibrium that maybe the Brazilian ambassador said was missing at the beginning of that process. Brazil concluded the agreement. It was not Mr. Azevêdo any longer. It was the Brazilian government concluded that agreement and ratified the agreement in record time, by the way, given Brazilian methodology and process for ratification. So I don't think there is any inconsistency whatsoever in any of the things I said before and where we are today. Secondly, on the issue of the numbers. The numbers were not created by us. They were the result of 2 or 3 different models, and I have 2 different models that were developed. And those numbers, in fact, are modest. They are conservative. They're in the middle of the range, which is consistent with the numbers of independent studies that we have seen out there, some even greater than ours. So I think we did a pretty good job at that. And when I asked my economists to work on that, I specifically told them that I wanted numbers that were sensible and that they could defend to any economist who would criticize that we could put the studies and show how those numbers were reached. And we're very, very comfortable with the numbers that we have on the table now.
Yeah. Can I just follow up on the numbers? For example, now I'm quoting a figure of...
Please, Ravi, others would like to take the floor. So if you have a question,
get to the... then I'll ask after others.
Get to the question, but not a speech.
Get to the question
Thanks.
is not simple. You have to state something, no?
Others have got to the point quickly, so you can follow that.
Why I'm asking about the numbers is there is no consistency. For example, the Economist magazine, fortnight before the Bali Agreement, gave a figure of 68 billion. And the same magazine, a week after the Bali Agreement, gave a figure of 400 million. Similarly, there are economists who are saying that trade facilitation actually imposes burdensome and costly requirements which countries cannot manage. The Tufts study is one. There are several other studies. It's very convenient for us to take, the figures which are pleasing to our ears.
Okay,
so
Ravi.
the question is that, there is no consistency in an intangible agreement like this.
It's not a question.
Yeah. It's a question.
No, it's not a question. You just said there isn't. My answer to you is that we are extremely comfortable with the numbers that we have on the table. We backed the studies, and if you want, we can get the economists to sit down, explain to any of you who want to look at the studies and to see why those numbers came about and the result of the evaluations that they went through. We have a very serious number of people working here I asked them to be as conservative and realistic as possible. That's what they did. And frankly, all the numbers that I have seen are consistent with the other economic studies, independent studies that were conducted. The numbers, 48 billion, I won't even comment on that. It's absolutely out of the picture.
Can we have
absolutely out of the picture?
Can we have a question, please? Questions? Bryce and Tom, you can have another round. Go ahead.
Thank you. On a broader point, multilateralism. The Trump administration is now reevaluating its participation in multilateral agreements. Curious to hear from you, why do you think the WTO is important, and why would it be a bad idea for the U.S. to leave the WTO? Thank you.
I don't want to comment on any particular country's views or comments because, in particular, as far as trade is concerned, I am yet to have any kind of conversation with the new administration. I think that the trade team is still being put in place. We still don't have a USTR, for example. So I think we're ready to have a conversation anytime they want. We will be available for that. I am quite confident that the WTO offers tools to address many of the concerns that have been expressed recently. I am absolutely confident that other WTO members would like to engage in a constructive way, trying to find a path forward like we always have. The WTO is about convergence. It's about understanding different views and trying to find common ground. I don't think that we're facing anything that is unmanageable because different views and different opinions have been a part of our work on a daily basis.
Tom?
Thank you. I'm afraid I had a very similar question, and you've kind of answered it. But just to follow up, I mean, when you say that you don't think we're facing anything unmanageable, is that because you think that there's scaremongering going on about what the new U.S. administration might bring in, or you just prefer to see in a very typical WTO way, you prefer to see the detail of what they're proposing before you comment on it? Because as we know, President Trump kind of seems to pronounce policy by tweet, and perhaps we should expect what he's already said. And you may not have seen the detail of that, and nor have any of us. But a lot of people think they know what's coming. How do you feel about that?
Look, I honestly don't know what kind of trade policy will come. I honestly don't. I have heard, as far as the U.S. is concerned, I have heard concerns about unfair trade. I don't know any WTO member who is for unfair trade. I have heard complaints, for example, about the balance of agreements that were struck in the past. This is not the first time I hear that either. I have been doing trade for a long time, much longer than I expected at first. And I have seen situations like this arise over and over again, where unpredictability or uncertainty prevail, especially in transition, when you have one administration giving space to another administration that has different views about how to conduct economic and trade policy. And over time, we always manage to find a way of moving forward, bearing in mind that positions evolve over time. And it's been done before. And I don't think that we're seeing anything now that would preclude us from making that kind of progress again.
Any further questions? JP.
Just a clarification: the agreement is is MFN. So I mean the countries who don't ratify they still take advantage of the deal.
Well, everybody does benefit from that, in the sense that when you change and simplify your customs procedures, they apply to all WTO members. So in that sense, yes. But the agreement applies and commits only those who have ratified. just to be clear. So those who have not ratified, they don't have the obligation to implement, although in a way or another, they benefit from those measures. So that's a slight distinction there.
Any further questions? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.